Yeah, let me open the session. Good morning, good evening, dear participants. Welcome to the Atlassian Visakhapatnam community event on writing better user stories with Jira. I am Subramanyam, your moderator and Atlassian community leader. As part of knowledge sharing sessions, networking, and learning the number one tool in the marketplace, Atlassian Jira, we are conducting these online events with leading trainers, consultants, and experienced professionals. Speaker of the event is Vijay, who is a well-known trainer and consultant and a face in BS Circle. Dear participants, currently we are using BY platform for this event, where audience will be only in listen-only mode. So if anyone have any questions, I would request you to please post your questions on the chat Q&A window, where speaker Vijay will be checking the chat window on and off, and he will be answering the questions. If you would like to speak with him, we have allocated 5 to 10 minutes end of this session. So you may post your questions or you may request to speak so we can enable the audio option. Vijay, over to you.
Yeah,
Please introduce yourself.
yeah. Friends, good morning. This is Vijay Shukla. I'll be your presenter and knowledge sharer for this session, writing better user stories than Jira. So, at the outset, I must thank Subramanyam for giving me the opportunity to speak to the Atlassian community, especially the Atlassian Visakhapatnam chapter. And uh, the topic of the day, as mentioned, will be writing better user stories than Jira through Jira. So, you see, this is a very apt and a title which is so much important as far as the current time is concerned, because I may assume that so many of you are IT professionals who are working on IT projects, wherein you see we are completing our projects via a Scrum framework, and Jira is the number one project tracking or project management tool for projects which take up the which follow the Scrum framework. And as many of you are aware, and as you may be aware, that user stories are the is the method to basically document requirements on a project. So this is our topic of the day, wherein I will take up how to write a good user story and how do we document and manage that user story as the project progresses through Jira. Before I take you to the content of the session and you see the main session itself, it is an opportunity for me to introduce myself to this august audience. I've been a consultant and trainer for last 10 years, and I've been fortunate enough to be in the profession of business analysis since 1997, the very same year when I completed my post graduation in management from School of Management, IIT Bombay. So, and prior to that, I'm an engineer from IIT Roorkee. But today, it is less about me and more about Jira and user stories. That is what we are going to cover now. And you can write your questions on the question and answer panel, and I will check that time to time, and I will respond to those questions. As is the method of this platform, I will be able to interact with you one on one only at the end of the session. During the session, if you want me to address anything specific or if you want a clarification, just put up the question there. So let us start the lecture right now. So this is the event, Writing Better User Stories with Jira. And as I mentioned, this is a ACE Atlassian ACE virtual event and organized by Visakhapatnam chapter. So let us move on to the index. So this is the index for today's session, and this is what I'm going to cover. So this is where I'm going to devote my next 50-55 minutes onto it. So we will start with user stories and its role on a Scrum project. As we are to write user stories as product owners, as business analysts, or maybe, as maybe any other team members, we need to understand what are the three key components of a user story. Then we will learn how user stories are handled on a Jira software and a Jira system using the Scrum template. As we toggle between the content and contents and components of a user story and a Jira Scrum template, we will learn a little more about user stories with some practical examples. We document requirements by writing user stories, but a project is something which has to get over with time and which progresses with time. So then we need to manage user stories as the project progresses. So that management may include, update of the status of the user story, let us say, from being taken up to done, or let us say assigning a user story to some team member, or maybe mm, assigning this user story to a release, etc. So how do we manage these user stories within the Jira system will also be taken up. Then user stories, as we all know, are part of a project, and then project will have themes, epics, sprint, tasks, subtasks, etc. So we will relate user stories with all these concepts. And finally, there will be a question and answer session. All those who would wish to speak, they are welcome. So let us start with the item number 1 on agenda, which is user stories and its role on Scrum projects. So allow me to set the context. The context is that here is a team, a software development team, which is developing a software project for its client. Just for the sake of a small example, let us say there is a team which is developing a loan management module or a loan management system or a digital loan management system, which is part of a larger net banking solution. So you may be using a net banking system as a savings account holder or a current bank account holder. And now this bank or your bank is now today planning to have an additional module, which is a digital lending platform wherein people can avail digital loans. So I'm just starting with this small example. Now the team is to develop this module. And if this team is to develop this module via a Scrum framework, the requirements of the project will be documented in form of user stories. So instead of traditional requirements which we use to document in form of functional requirements, etc., we will write user stories here. And user stories have a set format. As you see on the screen, wherein you can see activities like sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective, etc. So these are all these four are ceremonies which happen over a project. Product backlog is basically the full catalog of the requirements or user stories of the product or project. And over and above these user stories, there are additional components also. And then we complete this Scrum project in multiple cycles. Every such delivery cycle is a sprint, and on a sprint we cover or we complete certain functionalities, which is a subset of a product backlog, which we identify as a sprint backlog. So I believe many of you will be aware of the Scrum project cycle, so I won't spend more time here. For now, we will just focus that there are certain requirements of this project, which is development of a digital lending management module for a net banking product, and we are to document those requirements. So to document those requirements, we will be utilizing user stories. There are three key components in a user story. These three key components are role, goal, and benefit. So if you are to write a user story, at the minimum or at the core, you have to remember these three words. What, who the role, what is the goal for this role, and what is the benefit which this user role for the given software is going to achieve. Let us see and let us quickly learn to write a user story through an example. So a user story, as I mentioned, is nothing else but a project requirement. User stories are written in a particular style. So that style has got these three key components: role, goal, and benefit. So the style is as follows. As a user role, I want certain action to achieve, that is a goal, so that some benefits accrue to me. So every time you write a user story, this is the format. As an user, so this is a example on how one can write a user story for a user who would like to register to the Facebook platform. So the role, let us say, is the user. As an user, I would like to register to the Facebook platform so that I can communicate with my friends, relatives, and colleagues with ease and without any time or geographic restriction. So the role is the Facebook user. Goal is to register on the Facebook platform so that next time he can communicate with his friends, relatives, and colleagues over the Facebook platform, over internet, without any time and geographic restrictions. So this is the benefit. Every time you write a user story, remember these three words: role, goal, and benefit. So this is how you have to write it. What you can do, whichever software project you are a part of, whatever you see real life softwares you come across, even if you are not participating on a Scrum project, just try to write 7-10 user stories on that for that software, and then you need to refine that as well. Don't don't worry if that user story doesn't come out to be perfect for the first time. Some more example. As a bank account holder, I want to pay monthly utility bills through net banking service so that I can make the payment with ease. So the benefit is I can make the payment with ease. Role, goal, and benefit. So here I would like to highlight different people may be able to articulate the very same benefit in different words. So role will typically be the same. A given role will have multiple goals in the software. How we articulate the benefit can be different. So this is the crux of a user story: role, goal, and benefit. So we move ahead, and I believe you people are in sync and you are able to understand these three key components of a user story. If that's so, just send me a yes on the message window so that I'm reassured that the audience is with me. Because very quickly we will move on from here and we will see how we are going to document these user stories on a via Jira application. So let me check if there is some reassurance. Okay, so I think the audience is with me. Just in case, if you have any question, you are welcome to write. And at the opportune time, I will address that. Moving ahead. There is yet another format in which you can write a user story. As, who, when, where, I want, because, why. So, as a savings bank account holder, anytime from an ATM kiosk, I would like to withdraw cash with convenience. So you can see as who. So this is the role, savings bank account holder. When, anytime, 24/7. Where, from an ATM kiosk, I would like to withdraw cash. So here you can see goal is to withdraw cash and the benefit is the convenience. So this is yet another method into through which you can write a user story. Both the formats are okay. And remember, our goal is to document it in a manner that various stakeholders of the software project, including the client, are able to understand these user stories, and ultimately these user stories get translated into functional aspects of working software. So that is what our goal is. And you will also agree with me that sometimes this user story in itself is not to good enough instruction for software developers to complete the functionality. So as we will see shortly, there are other avenues or other um, supporting documents or techniques which are available through which you can uh, enrich this user story and through which the developers can complete this user story into a working functional specification for a software. So as we move forward, we will see what those you see tools techniques are and how do we handle that in Jira. So moving ahead, now we are on part 3 of the agenda, using the Jira Scrum template for writing user stories. So far, let me check if there is anything which requires my attention. So almost so many of you have said yes. So I may assume that everyone is in sync up to this point of time. So let's proceed. We have a lot to cover in this 1 hour. So now, when we progress with our software project, we first, what we need to do, we need to log on to our Atlassian account. So this Atlassian account will provide you the access to the Jira system. Jira as a software is available to you on the cloud. It is also available to you if your company has basically installed Jira on a dedicated server. So the demonstration which I will provide to you right now is my user account on the cloud. So first thing is I need to log on to my Atlassian account. If you have an Atlassian account for yourself, you can uh, log on simultaneously with me as well. And before I take you to this log on, I can also share with you that Atlassian has provided to each of the mm, members of the software development community a plan which is available for free. So just in case, as an individual, if you are in a situation where Jira is not being used at your company, still you are a Jira enthusiast, you can subscribe to that plan to start with. So to log on to the Atlassian account, this is id.atlassian.com. So this is where I am going to do a log on. So let's move step by step. So www.id. So I think it has taken my logon through memory through the prior memory, which was available in the browser history. I can do a log out and log in again so that each of you are comfortable with the first step, that is to do a log on. So moment you start with ID at Atlassian.com. You need to have an Atlassian ID. I need to press continue here. I need to provide my software password. So with this step, I have logged on to my Atlassian account, and the Atlassian, as you know, has got multiple products. Jira is the trailblazer product, but then there are so many other powerful and successful products offered by Atlassian, including Confluence, Bitbucket, etc. So, but since I am to write these user stories on Jira, I will basically be using the Jira software version. So here I click on Jira software. And this is the dashboard which will come to you. So we have completed the first activity, that is we have logged on to the Jira software. Now it may so happen that your project is already in progress. If the project is in progress, and as a product owner or as a business analyst, if you are to write a user story, this is your go-to button, that is the create button on the top panel towards the right. But let us assume that even we are to start with the Jira Scrum template. So this is where you need to start. So there are these two options. Choose the project type. So two options available: a classic project and a next gen project. Classic project is the project which is, you see, which has got an enriched functionality. And for a software development project which involves a team, I suggest we need to start with classic. So here for this ID, I think classic is not available. Let me check some other ID. Just give me a minute, friends. I'll do a log out and log in again. So I have a different account. I'll use that. Log out. Since I'm using multiple accounts, there is some small confusion. Not this one. Okay. I think there is some conflict on the two IDs which I use. Just give me a minute. I'll be able to resolve, or otherwise we will Yeah, friends, just give me a minute. Sorry for this minor hiccup. I think there is some conflict between the two user IDs which I'm using for this ACE community event and the event which I'm using right now. But I'll be able to resolve this, hopefully. Otherwise, I have to use the yeah, I think now I am at the right place. So this is where we need to start. You see, once you do a log on, you need to choose for Jira software. So I am opting for this Jira software here. I believe my screen is visible to each of you. And now, as a business analyst, as a product owner, what you need to do, you need to either write a user story right from here if your project is already in motion and if your project is already available. But what we will do, we will create a new project, and on that new project, we will be writing user stories utilizing Jira. So there are these two options, a classic project and a next gen project. For a proper software development activity, I suggest you choose a classic project because it has got necessary functionality and features which are required for a Scrum software project to be carried out. A next gen project template is a slightly useful template when you have you see some personalized project or some personalized activity to be tracked and managed on Jira. So we utilize for the classic template. Here we enter a project name. Let us say we use yet another project, which is basically a online, let us say, a general insurance portal for a given insurance company. There are other templates which are also available, but for now we won't move on to those templates. We will utilize the Scrum template. So I am creating a project. Typically on a project environment, there might be a Jira administrator who would have created the project, and you would be one of the many team members, probably as a business analyst or a product owner participating in this team. So now what we have done, we have created this project, Online General Insurance. Here, now on this project, as a product owner, you will be interacting with your clients, you will be interacting with other stakeholders, and while you interact with your clients, you will be documenting the user stories, and then these user stories will be planned across sprints via sprint planning meetings, and then these stories will be developed and you see tested and delivered to the client. So let us start. So up to this point, we have created a project, and now we will be documenting the requirements of this project in form of user stories. So this is what we have completed. We have also selected this Jira software, and while we select Jira software, your ongoing projects will be shown here. either you will be writing the user stories on these ongoing projects, or you can create a new project. So we have just created a new project using a classic project template. So this is where we have progressed so far. Now to write a user story, I have just put this to highlight. I have put a text box here with a green boundary. We need to utilize this create. Click on this create button. So far, if the audience is with me, just send me a yes so that I am reassured, and I'll also check if there are any questions at this moment. And I'll check the Q&A also. So far, there aren't any things in Q&A, so we move ahead. So now we need to create a new user story while clicking on this create button. And now while we click on this create button, the Jira system will allow us the facility to document this user story. Let me click on create. So this is our project, which is already selected because we are in this project area, online general insurance portal, issue type story. There are other issue types in Jira also. We will understand what these issue types are. Story, task, bug, and epic are 4 issue types which are available, primary or basic issue types which are available in the Jira system. So let us say we write a user story and we write a summary. Every story
Hi,
will have
Vijay.
a story title.
Vijay,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. Would you be able to maximize the screen or the browser zoom, please?
Okay.
Please click on 3 dots
Just
on
a
the
minute.
top right corner of your
Yeah.
browser.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
fine? Okay.
Yeah, it should be fine. Thank you.
Okay. So you see every story, the user story, which we have basically learned with that format, the role, goal, and benefit, will also have a title. So let us say I provide for this online general insurance project, I provide a title, view past premiums paid. For now, if you can see, there aren't any components. I will let you know how we can, you see, classify, provide a good classification to a user story using components. Then there is also a facility to add attachments to a user story. This is to enrich the user story in a manner that the developers, the software testers, and other team members are able to understand this user story a little better. So say, for example, as an attachment, we can even add an image of a wireframe as to how the GUI is going to come up. But for now, we will just quickly create a user story. And then at a later stage, I will demonstrate these functionalities which are there within the Jira system so that you can write a user story which is good enough for the development team to take up and to deliver. So as now again, remember role, goal, and benefit. So as a policy holder, I would like to view So we have provided a summary, we have provided a description. So the role is the policy holder. Goal is to view the details of past policy premiums purchased. And now I need to write the benefit also. By I could have written so that I do not have to visit the branch of the insurance company, so that I save my time. So reporter, this is my login ID through which I have done the login. Linked issues, there is a facility for linking the issues also. Fixed versions, we will be taking up these things very shortly. You can assign a priority to a user story. So as you can see here, there are multiple priorities which can be assigned. Typically, the user stories which have a high priority, which will be taken up in earlier sprints. You can even provide a label. So again, this label will allow you to group user stories, so that if you are to go through your project, you can basically see stories which are having a same label together. So let us say we provide label as premium. New label can even be created. Epics we will shortly see. And as we know, a user story can be organized to be taken up in multiple sprints. For now, we just create this user story. So your issue ON1 has been created, but is not currently visible. We will see where it is right now. So if we see the backlog, I've clicked on backlog right now. One issue, which is a user story, has been created. So far, we have created a issue, which is a user story, which is nothing else but a project functionality, which is written with three principal components, which is a role, goal, and benefit. But before we move ahead, we need to understand the issue types, other issue types in Jira, because you remember when we created a user story, or when let us say, if I click on this plus sign to write a user story, there are other options of issue type, which is task, bug, or epic. So let us see what these other options are. So a story is basically the functionality. A bug is basically a problem which impairs or prevents the functions of the product. So out here, we can also create and report the bugs. An epic is a large user story, or sometimes multiple user stories can be grouped together in an epic. Tasks are activities which may be independent of user stories and which may not affect the project functionality. So let us say there is a team. Now within this team, I may assign a task for a given team member to take up, let us say, a training program for new joinees of the team. Now, this activity can't be clubbed as a user story on my during a sprint. However, this activity also will require some time, and that time and that effort has to be recognized. So that is where we can also use tasks. Subtasks can be put under a story, bug, or task. As we will see, there is a facility when we see where you see stories can be managed. There is a facility where you see story bug or task can be mm, additionally qualified with subtasks. Epics do not have subtasks because you see, no real activity happens at the epic level. Multiple user stories, as I have mentioned, can be clubbed into epics. So we were here
Vijay,
while we create a
let me
yeah.
pause. Sorry for the inconvenience. Would you zoom the PPT as well? It's visible. It's not that clearly visible.
Okay, let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can minimize the side menu slides so that we get the full screen of the PPT.
Okay. Yeah.
Zoom one more. I mean, zoom one more point. Would you be able to zoom? Yeah. Perfect.
So you can see here.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
while we create a issue, most of the times we will be writing user stories. There are these other options, either to choose from a task, which I explained, can be an activity which may not be directly linked to functionality of the product. Then bugs, they are explained self-evident what a bug can be. And then there are epics through which we link UC related user stories together. Moving ahead. So let us, you see, take up this example. As an insurance policy holder of Progressive Insurance Company, so this is not required. You see, for your project, it will be clear as to who your client is. So that context will be clear. I've just written here for clarification. I would like to view past premium payment for all my current and expired insurance policies. So this is the user story. I have not even mentioned, if you can see here, I have not even mentioned the benefit. Even that is fine. These can be your subtasks. Printout can be taken by the insured. Download link of the report shall be provided to the registered email ID. And we know how we can handle it in Jira and how we can document it in Jira. All what we require is to basically click on this plus sign. It is available everywhere on our Jira instance. Just click here and you will get this option wherein you can document your issue as a user story. Again, see, as an insured, this is not required on a project. I would like to intimate my change of address via Progressive online portal. We will let us have a look at yet another story. As an insured, I would like to execute myself my change of address via Progressive online portal. So you see, words, while you document your user stories, words are also important. So you need to focus on the words because it is through these words people will translate the user story into a project or product functionality. So here what we do, we are just doing the intimation. So while we intimate, I think there must be, you can visualize there is some form through which we can intimate the change of address wherein we provide necessary attachments, and then maybe at the back office at the Progressive Online Insurance Company, someone is basically making that change of address. Whereas here in this similar user story, we have written as an insured, I would like to execute by self my change of address. So this means the portal itself is providing the facility to change the address to the insured. So here you could see we have used the word execute by self. Here we have used intimate. So words are important and you need to focus on that as a product owner or as a business analyst. Now we move on to the next area of discussion as to how we manage user stories in Jira. We have
Vijay,
understood this.
sorry for
Yes,
interrupting one more time. We have few
welcome.
Q&A, we have few Q&As in the forum.
Let me.
Um,
Yeah, I'll see that. I'll immediately check that. Thank you for pointing that out. Let me see what are the Q&A. So can you please explain the importance of components and labels? Yes. So while we take up the management of user stories in Jira, I will address both the component and labels. So there is another question from George. Is it okay to use more than one label for a user story? Is it a best practice? You see, as such, labels are one user story can be provided more than one label. So not an issue. How a label is different than a component? So I'll address this while I'll demonstrate to you how components can be utilized. So I think all these three questions are on component and labels. I have some slides wherein we will see how do we add a component in a Jira system and what is the utility of that component. So just wait for another few slides. So we will see how do we manage user stories in Jira. So the first point is, so these are the areas which I am going to take up. Yeah. So anything from your side, Subramanyam, or shall I move ahead?
No, please carry on. Please carry on. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is what we are going to learn quickly. Classifying user stories in component, update of a Jira story or a user story in Jira, adding attachments for better explanation, assignment of user stories, specifying fixed versions, adding story points to a user story, creating subtasks, and searching these issues. So very quickly, I will basically demonstrate these points to you. So managing user stories in Jira. So far what we have done, we have created one user story, and that user story can be seen on the backlog area. So you can see, I will show it to you on the screen also. If you click on backlog, your user story is shown here. This is view past premium paid. If you double click on this story, on this panel, the right panel which you see here, this is the area wherein you can manage your user story. So this is the primary area wherein you may be assigning a user story to a team member if you have not done that while you have created a user story, or you may be adding subtasks, you may be adding some story points and things like that. So all you need to do, you need to go to the backlog here, select your story, double click, and this additional window will come up. So this is where we are. Moving ahead. So we start with component. So component on a Scrum project, as we handle it in Jira, is basically an area wherein we can basically club user stories into multiple components. So one component, let us say, for your user story can be security. Yet another component can be UI. Let us say we can have a component on called testing and Q&A, wherein we can club all those bugs there. So it is a method to classify. So out here for this project, if you can see the screen, I'll quickly magnify. I have this component which is security. So what we will do for our project, we will create a component. Components can be, for a Jira project or a Scrum project, can be created from this place. So the project doesn't have any components yet. Components are subsections of a project used to group issues within a project into smaller parts. So UI can be a part, database can be a part, Q&A can be a part. So create component. Let us say we create a component security. I have created a component. Let us add a story which has some relevance to security. So I'll quickly add a story, and it will also be a repeat for those who are new to Jira as to how a user story can be created, let us say. Here now, if you can see, there is an option wherein I can choose this component security, and you can have so many other components as well. And as you can see, the same story can be added to more than one component. So create an issue as a role. And user stories are always written from the point of view of the user. So we have, if we go to the backlog, we have two stories, and we have added a component for this story, which is enabled two-factor authentication. So please, so let us have a look as to where we are right now. So classifying user stories into components. So this is one activity which we have completed right now. And as someone has asked, now I think I need to answer a question which is basically on components and labels.
Vijay, on chat Q&A, we have few more questions.
Yeah, chat and Q&A. Yeah. So I think so, Anit, I think I have mentioned how components can be utilized. And yes, components and labels have a similarity. So we can, but components are more formal in nature, and components can, as you can see, will be created in a formal manner and mostly at the project level. Whereas as far as the label is concerned, label will again group your user stories. You can again identify your user stories via a label, but label is something which has got a lesser formality with respect to a component which is there on a Scrum project. But so yes, we can we link components to a particular user story? So yes, user stories can be clubbed into components. And I think to Naga, as I have mentioned, how component security is different than a label. So there is a similarity. Component is more of a formal classification vis-a-vis a label. There is a question from George. Can components be created with features, example login, as in grouping user stories aligned? So I think if you are to group stories at this level, I will suggest that you please use a label and components be utilized for a bigger classification, bigger and a formal classification. So that is my suggestion to you. Update status of a Jira story. So this is point number 2. So what we are doing, we are just managing our user stories as the project is making a progress. You see, whatever stories we take up, we can update the status from this panel. And though I am not showing you how a sprint is managed on a Jira system, there also we can basically visibly move a story from one bucket to another. But for now, if you are to just update the status, you can do it from here also. So say, for example, from to do, you can just update the status, and all those who are relevant participants for this story, or who are basically assigned this story, or who are watching this issue, they will be notified via an email. Adding attachments for a better explanation. Now, as I have mentioned, that our goal is to develop software for the client as per the specification, as he has mentioned. We are writing user stories because we have seen that when we write user stories in a simple manner with the user role in focus, the specification is simple and the project success or the project outcome is slightly better. So however, we can always enrich our user story with attachments. So to do that, so say for example, I am just adding that functionality here. So attachments can be provided there also, which is basically while we create a user story, and they can be added here as well. Just we are here. See here. Creating a component we have done. To do in progress, this is also we have completed. Let's get back. Add attachment. So here you can upload a file. You can basically add a recently uploaded file. So you can upload a file from here. There are recent uploads which are also being shown. You can attach those files as an attachment to a user story here. So I'll just inserting this file, which is already a PDF wireframe available for that. So I'm just inserting this. So this is how you add attachment to your user story. Then how do we create release and specify fixed versions, or basically how do we organize these user stories across releases? So after every sprint, you see, we deliver software with additional functionality to the client. And during the sprint review meeting, the client views this functionality, and the software which is equipped with additional functionality is demonstrated to the client. And the client may then accept the sprint. However, it does not mean that a release is being made to the end user or the end users of the client. So what we can do, we can club multiple sprints into a release. And while we create user stories, we can also specify which version or which release it will go to. So for that, we need to create a release, and we need to specify a version. For that, on the project board, there is an option for release, and then you can club issues there. So we will see how it is done right now.
We have few more queries on the Q&A portal at this
Okay,
moment.
let me check.
Scroll up. Please scroll up. Yeah, a bit more. Yes.
So I have answered to Naga that, and then can we link components? Can we? Yeah, in our project, we use labels like business analysis if the story is of requirement type, dev if it is of development story, a QA. So this is fine. George, if you are using it, a UI story. So instead of using labels, I suggest you could have used the, you could have better used the components. How do we mention fields that screen in a user story? So Jira has facility for screens. However, the how the screens are handled in for a user story is not part of the agenda today. So and it may take a little time to explain. So that can be taken up on some other meeting or some other forum. So so Subramanyam has mentioned, or if you draft the user story in Excel,
No, the
you can
question
paste
is
that format in Jira.
that's answer
Yeah.
to the next question. From Rupam. Could you please check once the next one?
Query from, do we have to mention acceptance criteria while making user stories in Jira? You see, acceptance and evaluation criteria is part of a user story. You can always mention it. You can handle that. We never used the components field. We'll try to use it. So George has an observation. We never use the component field. We'll try to use it from the next sprint. New learning. Yeah. Thank you, George. Thank you for your observation. So specifying release and fixed versions. Let us complete this quickly because we have slightly overshot the time, but allow me to. So for your project, there is this option for release. You can just create a release and a version here. So the stories can also be organized across releases. We can assign story points to a user story. Now we are aware that story points are basically decided during a estimation meeting or story point estimation meeting. And during a sprint planning session, only those stories are taken up which have been estimated earlier. As and when your user story gets estimated, you can basically provide that estimate here. So just go to the board and then click on the user story backlog and then provide the story point. So this is how we do it as quickly as we can do it here. We go to backlog. On the backlog, we have selected this story. Story points, they are here. Let us say I add 8 story points, and for my organization, say for example across the organization, one story point maps to 1 hour of effort. So this is how we can add story points. So these are some of the options which we covered here on how do we manage a user story in the Jira system. Now this is the last part of today's session as to how we relate user stories with the project, theme, epic, sprint, task and subtask, etc. Some of these concepts we have already covered, but let us put everything into perspective so that we can relate all these items together. So now we know user stories are part of a project. So a project functionality is being documented in form of user stories. Then many a times you may hear a word theme. Theme is a large organizational effort. So for a net banking system, the example which I started with, a theme can be a digital lending module or a digital lending portal, which is part of the net banking system. As we discussed earlier, a project may have multiple epics. A epic is a set of related user stories clubbed together. User stories, as we know, are taken up for completion in given sprints. A Scrum project is delivered in multiple iterations. One such iteration is a sprint where we deliver or we prepare the project for additional functionality, and we also, you see, remove bugs or defects identified earlier. So just to, though I may assume that so many of you will be aware of the Scrum framework, but still you can, I will give you a recap that prior to a sprint, there is a sprint planning meeting wherein we identify the features or functionalities or user stories to be taken up during a given sprint. All those user stories which are identified in the sprint planning meeting are taken up during the sprint. During the sprint, there is a daily Scrum meeting wherein we discuss the progress of the project through a given format every day. At the end of the sprint, there is a sprint review meeting, and the demo of the project is given to the client. And then there is an internal team meeting, which is a sprint retrospective. So user stories are taken up in completion for stories. A user story may have multiple subtasks. Then there are tasks which are independent of user stories, and many a times these tasks may not translate directly into project functionality. So some of this I have covered already. Theme is a large organizational effort. Epics are a group of interrelated user stories. User stories are functionalities to be taken up in a given sprint. Tasks are independent actions and may not impact product functionality. Subtasks are linked to stories, task, or a bug. So this is what I intended to cover today. And now I'll check what the additional question and answers are, and then we may move on to open discussion, subject to the availability of time and subject to the organizers. Yes. So let me see. So we have a question. When we create 5 subtasks under a user story, there is some work in user story and 5 subtasks work. How do we overall estimate for the user story? Sum of 5 subtask estimates plus user story estimation. Now, you see, Venkat, I will provide my answer with a bit of caution, and I'll tell you what that caution is. So that cautionary note is, you see, software development activity or a software development project is a complex activity and which involves, you see, experts across multiple areas. So say, for example, I have spent my entire career working towards the requirement side as a business analyst, product owner, and a product manager. There are guys who are experts in delivery, project managers, etc. So I may give you a direction as to how estimation can be taken up for a user story, but this is some activity which should be better left to the delivery managers and to the development team members. So typically, you see, if there is a user story with multiple subtasks, we can estimate that user story ground up. What is the effort which is involved in individual tasks? And then we sum that up. So that is it. But I can, at the cost of repetition, I can tell you this is some effort estimation is some activity for which, you see, as a product owner, I have, even if I claim, limited expertise.